Hi, Nora. Hi, Wafa. Hi, Zinab. Like, great to see our colleagues from Egypt, from Pakistan. Like, I'm in Budapest, so in Hungary, but I'm English originally, so that's my nationality. But this evening, we're going to be talking about poster presentation and public speaking skills. If you've not met me before, thank you very much for the opportunity to do this presentation. I'm Gareth. I work with Naran and the Mars Research Network, the Mars Research Hub. We do lots and lots of training, lots of presentations together all of the time. I can see Zainab from Egypt, Tayaba from Pakistan, Hoyam from Sudan. Sorry about my pronunciation of your names, everybody. I worked in the UK, I worked in the US, I worked in Ireland, in the UK and also in Hungary, some papers, some presentations over the course of my academic career. Now our goal is to help researchers with their writing, with their publishing, with their English language communication skills. Fantastic. So great to see so many of our colleagues here from all over the place this evening. If you're listening to this on Facebook and maybe on LinkedIn, on YouTube, great to see you as well. Absolutely fantastic. So our company, Research Square, we have helped more than 2.5 million authors in almost 200 countries over the last 15 years or so through our preprint server. Research Square Company, it's the largest preprint server in the world. You can see here on the screen a number of the publishers that we work with, a number of the other providers that we work with. So if you're looking for a place to publish your next paper, do get in touch. We're always available to help with all kinds of services and all kinds of advice. Like Naran and I can help you with your writing, with your publishing, with advice to get your paper published, advice about how you can achieve your maximum impact with your next paper. Well, today we're talking about conference presentations, poster presentations, and presentation skills. And so in this webinar, we will be talking about why you might consider to make a conference poster for a presentation. We'll talk about what to do. We'll talk about what not to do in terms of graphical and also in-person presentation skills for your talks. So presenting and also networking skills. So imagine you're going to a conference. What are you going to do? What advice can we give you to help you with that event? How we can assist you with your next in-person conference. And if you're anything like me, it's been a while since you were last at an in-person conference. I've been to a few over the last few months, but they've been quite local to where I am now. And it's been a bit nerve-wracking, I must say, being around all kinds of people again in person. So we'll get started. We'll think about presentation formats, but the point of all of this training is, of course, to help you achieve your potential. And we know that it's not easy in a second language or a third language or a fourth language, as we talked about at the beginning, getting your message across. So you're going to go to a conference. What are you going to do to present? Well, usually, of course, as you know, there will be two main kinds of presentation formats that you'll be undertaking at a conference: a poster or a slide presentation, or an oral presentation, an in-person presentation. We'll talk about both of these in our webinar this evening. I hope to give you some tips and some tricks in order to be more effective in both of these formats. I mean, of course, some people attend conferences and they don't present at all, but that's quite unusual, especially if you're at an earlier career stage. Most early career researchers, most PhD students, most postdocs, most people just getting started in their academic careers will be going to a conference and doing something, either a poster or an oral platform slide presentation. So that's our goal. That's what we're going to be talking about in this webinar this evening. And again, if you have comments, if you have questions, do put them into the chat box. We'll have time for questions at the end of our session together this evening. Don't forget that everybody attending this is going to get a certificate. They're going to get access to a recording and also the slides. So you'll be able to reuse this content whenever you want. Now, one of the key messages that I want to make at the beginning of our time together this evening is that writing an academic paper is quite different to presenting an academic piece of research, an academic article at a conference. On the left-hand side of the slide, you can see the shape of an academic article. And you'll remember this, I hope, maybe you won't, but you may remember this from some of our previous presentations together in this series. An article, a written academic paper, has quite a different shape to a presentation. In an article, you're going to dwell on the introduction. You're going to talk about the methods, the results, and in the discussion. But in a presentation, either a poster or an oral presentation, you will be spending most of your time talking about your results and providing people with lots of pictures. So a presentation is quite different to writing up and publishing an article for publication. And I hope that you can see this in the different shapes for articles versus presentations on this slide. In an oral presentation or in a poster, you're going to talk most about your results and what those results might mean, rather than all of the other bits and pieces that you would go into, especially in the introduction, the methods, the discussion in an academic article. And I would say that one of the biggest mistakes that people make when transferring a written academic article into a presentation at a conference is just to take the paper or the draft of the paper that they've got ready for submission and talk about that in the conference. That's not what you want to do. You need illustrations, you need messages, you need to dwell on your results. So articles versus presentations. In our webinar this evening, we're going to talk about presentations. So when you are considering going to a conference, you might, of course, be thinking about making a poster. We'll talk about talks, oral presentations, platform presentations in a moment, but ask yourself, why would you consider a poster at a conference? Well, most people would attend conferences primarily as networking opportunities. This is your opportunity to enhance your career. It's also your opportunity to ensure that people get to know about your research. So what we're going to do is talk about how to make the best impression possible, maybe get to that next career stage. So a good, effective conference poster and a talk as well, by the way, serves a dual purpose. It's above anything else a networking tool, your opportunity to put something out there that people in the conference are going to be interested in looking at. It's your key or presentation tool, and you are going to also effectively articulate your research, communicate your research to the other people that are at the conference. So it's predominantly your opportunity to network. So making a good first impression with either your conference poster or your talk is absolutely critical. So how can you do that? Posters, of course, popular choices for early career researchers. Everybody always considers them to be quite low risk, easier, they think, than presenting a talk. But this is not necessarily the case. One of the big mistakes that I always used to make in my academic career was that, I'm going to a conference, maybe it's easier for me to present a poster than a talk. And of course, the key here is to get noticed, spark a conversation about your research. So what you want really is that your poster is going to be eye-catching. Your presentation is going to be stimulating and thought-provoking. But the big question is, of course, how are you going to do that? Don't make the mistakes that I used to make in the past in my academic career, just thinking, I'm going to a conference. I can put the poster together at the last minute. I can put the talk together at the last minute. Sometimes I was even sitting at the conference, putting the talk or the poster together. That is, of course, a huge mistake. These are networking opportunities. You have the chance to get noticed. You have the chance to spark a conversation about your research. So, talking about posters initially as tools for presentation, as tools for getting your message across, your poster is going to be a communication tool. Of course, these are widely used in the academic community. Most conferences include poster presentation sessions. Research posters are used to summarize information or research concisely and attractively, publicize your research, and generate discussion. Well, of course, you do not want too much text. You want pictures, you want images, you want graphs, and you want to mix up the presentation formats if at all possible, because you don't want to be just another attendee. These are networking events, and you have the chance to put something together as a tool to get your message across to the other attendees at the conference so that you have something that's eye-catching. You've got something that people are going to remember you. It's key to stand out, and it's key to be as memorable as possible. So think about how you're going to do that. One of the keys to effective communication, speaking or presenting or talking to people face to face in person, is of course making a good first impression and being as memorable as possible. So you don't want to be just another conference attendee. So plan your attendance at those in-person conferences. We also spend a huge amount of time in online meetings as well. There are tricks, there are tips, there are things that you can do in online meetings as well to make sure that you get remembered by other people. Now, the most important part of any meeting, any conference, any presentation is planning in advance, especially if, like me, you're a bit introverted, you're a bit nervous about giving presentations. So conferences, you can start planning a long time before. You can see who's going to be there. You can look at the abstracts. You can look at the sessions. You can schedule your time. And I know that we've not been in the habit of doing this because of the pandemic, because everything's been shut down over the last 2 years, but it's important to plan in advance. Schedule your time, prioritize your time. Look at the conference social media, look at what's going to be happening at the meeting so that you can get involved, you can meet the people that you want to meet, you can make the best impression possible to the people that you want to meet at the conference. That is absolutely critical. And of course, with any presentation, you are going to have to prepare an abstract. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but almost always you're going to have an abstract ready. You're going to have something prepared that you are going to base your presentation upon, probably an abstract. This is very, very important as the basis for your work, for your presentation, for the outcomes at the conference. I would also say, look at the social media. Before you go to a meeting, before you communicate with people, it's important. You can participate in event build-up. You can find out what others are planning. You may learn about other fringe events and socials. You may find out who's going to be there and what they will be doing, what the other options will be for you at the conference. I see somebody in the chat is asking for my email address. Of course, I'm going to give it to everybody. It is gareth.dyke@researchsquare.com. Everybody listening to this is, of course, able and welcome at any point to get in touch with me, to get in touch with Naran at any time, during, after, at any point around these events. So when you're planning for your conference attendance, do participate in event build-up, do find out what others are planning, do get to learn about fringe events, because this is often a very important component of your presentation skills as well. So a poster, it's not a place to dump all of your data and technical information. It is a place to put only carefully curated, carefully selected information and visuals. Are all of the images you've got ready to go all needed? Of course they're not. Keep your poster, keep your talk as simple as possible. Usually, of course, when we do a piece of research, we do end up creating lots of images, lots of graphs, lots of tables, lots of presentations of our data, but we may not end up using all of them. We may not want to use all of them. You want to get your message across. So have a think about that as well. Keeping your presentation simple in a poster or in a talk is absolutely critical, absolutely the most important thing to think about. So above all, your poster, your talk, your conference presentation, it's a networking and it's a communication tool. That's much more important. That's the goal. That's much more important than getting across your research. Actually, the reason that you attend talks, that you go to conferences, that you present your research is to network with other colleagues in your field and get your message across. So that's what we're doing this for, creating a good first impression, getting your message across, making that fantastic initial impression and building your career, being as effective as possible. So, what's the most important, interesting, astounding finding from your research project? This is important for presenting talks as well. And how can I visually share my research with conference attendees? What medium should I use? A chart, a graph, a photo, or an image? What's the best way to get your message across? Think about doing something different. Think about changing the paradigm. 2 key questions as initial focuses for your communication when putting together a presentation, when talking about your research, when making a poster, when communicating your findings. What's the most important, interesting, or astounding finding from my research? And how can I visually share that with other people? So let's have a think about this in a little bit more detail as we go through our webinar today. As Paul Arden is famous for saying, the more visually striking your presentation is, of course, the more people will remember it. And more importantly, they will remember you. And that's what is most important, of course, about the way that you present yourself. You communicate your research. As P.T. Barnum, the famous American circus impresario, is famous for having said, it's better to be remembered than not to be remembered at all. The more strikingly visual your presentation is, the more people will remember it. So in a talk or in a poster, let's try to be memorable. What makes a great poster? Important information should be readable from a distance. Your title should be short and should attract people's interest. Your word count should be limited between 300 and 800 words. One of the big mistakes that people often make in conference posters is to put too much text onto the poster, too much words. Your text should be clear. It should be to the point. Your use of bullets, numbering, and headlines should be effective to make your poster, your talk, your presentation easy to read. You need a consistent and clean layout. Don't forget to include your acknowledgements. People do get quite upset if they've helped you with something and you do not put them onto your slides at the end of the day. And don't forget to include your name and, of course, your institutional abbreviations. You'd be absolutely amazed the number of talks I've seen, the number of posters I've looked at, and it's not clear where the authors are from. Don't forget about that reading order. Make sure your visual aids look professional. People do read text in a certain configuration in English. So you do need to have that thought about. You do need to have that ready on your slides, on your posters, so that people are able to follow what you wish to show. And this is a good tip for your slides, for your posters, for your visual aids, for all of your talks and presentations overall, your reading order. don't forget about those good old conference guidelines. Follow them for size, for shape, your materials, your formats and fonts. Different conferences have different guidelines, the length of time that you're able to be given for a talk, the different sections, how far away the audience will be, how many people will be in the audience. You want to use fonts that are clear and easy to read. You want to arrange your content as columns rather than in long rows. Use bullets and notes if you can, using different color formats, high resolution. And don't forget that, of course, if you're giving a presentation as a poster or a talk at a conference, your slides, your images need to be readable from a distance. Very, very important. But of course, we've all been to talks, we've all looked at posters where nobody's thought about that in advance, and you can't read what's on the slides, you can't read what's on the poster, the text is too small, they've not practiced in a lecture theatre, they've not looked at what their talk, their poster, their presentation looks like in a real environment, in a real presentation environment. So what about your poster design? I'll give you some examples of these. We do have lots and lots and lots of other online content and training materials. If you're thinking of going to a conference, if you're going to present your work, do get in touch with me, gareth.dyke@researchsquare.com. I will provide you with additional training materials. We also have the service at our company where we can help you with your poster design, with your figure design. So of course, do get in touch with me as well at the end of this presentation, or with the Mars Research Hub, with colleagues, with Naran, if this is something that you would find interesting for your own research. Information about poster design, we certainly can help you to get your poster professionally edited and, of course, printed. We're looking for an increase in readability. So some of the tips here on the left-hand side of the slide that will help you to do this: align your text to the left, use sentence case, use title case for the headings, bold or italics for emphasis, using bullets and note form, a good color scheme, and a simple background. We don't want to see justified text, avoiding all capitals, no shadows, 3D text, no use of underline, full sentences not needed in bullet points, and a busy background or a poor color scheme. Do get in touch with us if you feel that we can help you with this kind of thing. I can show you examples of posters. I can show you examples of presentations that work well in this kind of environment. The main sections of your poster, of your presentation: a brief introduction, general methodology, your main results, illustrations, a brief discussion, conclusions in bullets, 5 references. You do need to include funding information, any conflicts of interest, any ethics, and of course your own contact details, things to avoid, abstracts and lots of background, all of your methods, all of your results, too many illustrations, article style discussion, too many references, any missing declarations, and don't forget you do need a professional email address. Very, 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 very important. We do see this kind of thing all the time. Make sure you do have an institutional or at least a professional sounding email address for people to follow up with you at the end of your presentation. So we've all seen terrible examples of conference posters. What about these? You've walked around departments, you've walked around your own university, your own research institute, you've seen good examples and you've seen bad examples of the kinds of presentations that people make. Of course, these are not great. The text is small, there's too much text, the illustrations are tiny, the illustrations are hard to understand. What we are looking for are examples that are more effective. What do we think about these? There are some good and there are some bad examples of effective presentation formats out there. Again, let me emphasize that if you would like help with this kind of thing, we are always available. Naran, the Mars Research Hub, Research Square Company, just get in touch with us. We'll help you to analyze your data. We'll help you to come up with great presentation formats. We'll help you to come up with posters, with illustrations, with ways of presenting your data so that you can get your message across effectively at your next conference. Here's some other ones. The one on the left is someone I particularly like, but what about these examples? Are they good or are they bad? Are they effective ways to communicate your research to people at conferences? Of course, be daring. Keep in mind that there may be hundreds or thousands of posters at your next conference. You want something that will stand out. Many people will give a presentation at your next conference. You want to stand out. You want to make that great first impression. Here's a poster that one of the colleagues working with me put together a few years ago. It's about the structure of a bird feather. It's quite interesting. It's quite amusing, I think, because it's based around the structure of a feather, which I thought was quite cool. Like, he's talking about feather structure. He's talking about the biomechanics of feathers. The whole poster is based around the structure of a feather. So that might be something different, something that you might think about. It is, after all, at the end of the day, a networking and a communication tool. You are going to be putting a presentation together to make a good first impression, and of course, to get your message across. How are you going to network? There's a rule called the 10-second rule. What your topic is, prepare to introduce yourself and start a conversation. But remember, other people are just as nervous as you. It's not just you that's nervous. Going to a conference and talking to colleagues, and many senior colleagues at the meeting will, of course, want to talk to you. So when putting together your abstract, when preparing that communication tool, when preparing to begin that conference presentation, to put that information together, think about your message. What is the take-home message of your study? What is the one thing that you want people to get out of your work? The one thing that you want people to remember when they listen to your presentation, when they read your poster at the conference? Of course, a good quality abstract is honest and precise, stands alone. It's got to be findable in search engines, and of course, it's all that people are going to read at a conference. So it shouldn't be abstract, no technical jargon, short and specific, citing no references. And of course, we can help you with plagiarism checks. We can provide those kinds of checks if that's something that you need to have for your research. Don't write your abstract in a rush, almost as an afterthought. It needs to be a concise, standalone piece of writing with a very clear message, accurately reflecting the full text of your paper, and making sure that your abstract gets you accepted to give that conference presentation. You may have heard me talk about this before in earlier presentations that we've done in this series, but of course, thinking about your abstract, you can write an abstract effectively by answering the 4 questions that we put together. Why did you do the study? What did you do? What did you find? And what did you conclude? The 4 questions that form the basis of an effective abstract, of an effective conference presentation. Why did you do the study? What did you do? What did you find? And what did you conclude? If you can answer those 4 questions, you will be in great shape for putting together a conference presentation, for putting together a poster, for putting together your next talk. So I do have a few tips for preparing a talk at a conference. Keep it simple and engaging. Practice, practice, practice. One of the best ways to defeat your nerves when you have to give a presentation in another language or in your first language is to practice. Nerves are normal. If you weren't getting nervous about giving a talk, you probably would not be normal. And also, you are the expert. One of the best pieces of advice I was ever given about giving a talk is, remember, you are the expert. Nobody else in the audience knows more than you. If you get into that mindset, you will help yourself to defeat a lot of nerves, you will be more effective as a presenter and as a communicator. It's also critical to plan the talk carefully. A great rule of thumb, 1 slide per minute. So if you're being asked to give a 10-minute conference presentation, you do not want to have 200 slides. You need about 10 or 11 slides for a talk that length. If you're giving a talk that's 50 minutes or 45 minutes, plan it carefully. 1 slide per minute is a great rule of thumb. And of course, listen to the chairperson, listen to Naran, plan for your Q&A. And you can anticipate that by thinking, what are people likely to ask me about? What kinds of questions are likely to come up in this presentation as a result of this presentation? It's a great opportunity giving a talk. You never get a second chance to make a good first impression. Engaging with your audience, of course, is best done by storytelling. So think about your message, organize your thoughts in sequence, take your audience on a journey. Why should people listen to you? And ensure that people do remember you. Your elevator pitch, and that's a great way of thinking about this. What would you say if you got stuck in an elevator with somebody that you really wanted to talk to? What are you going to do? What are your keys to a great presentation? Keep it simple and be prepared. What is it that you want to get across in your presentation? 2 keys to effective communication. Set the scene with your first slide. What is your research about? What is the background to your research? Initially, set the scene. Tell the people listening to your presentation why they should be there, what they are going to gain from listening to your talk. And this is a great slide. This is the 3 rules for effective communication. When you give a talk, when you write a paper, when you put together a poster, it's very important, especially in verbal, in oral presentations. You tell people at the beginning what it is you're going to talk about, what you're going to tell them. Then you give them the information, and then at the end of the presentation, you reinforce that by telling them what you have told them about. You see this on TV, you see this with newsreaders, you see this with all kinds of presentations, all kinds of communication. I'm going to talk this evening about X, Y, and Z. Then you talk about X, Y, and Z, and then you come back at the end and say, this evening, ladies and gentlemen, we have talked about X, Y, and Z. These are great rules for effective communications. In the middle part of your talk, your methods, you will tell people the steps that you took to solve the problem, and keep it simple. Remember that slide that we looked at earlier with the difference between the shape of a presentation and the shape of an academic paper. Keep it simple, 1 slide if possible, talk about your methods, and I also do recommend that you emphasize your results, your outcomes, but also keep that simple as well. You do need to just have a simple list of outcomes from your research. So what about thinking about just doing 3? Things always work great in 3s. One of the rules of rhetoric is to talk about things in 3s. I came, I saw, I conquered. Veni, vidi, vici. 1, 2, 3. Listing 3 things that you found out in your research. Bam, bam, bam. Keep it simple, using a series of slides to explain your 3 key findings, 1 slide for each, and using pictures, building out that information in your presentation so you become an effective communicator. To do this, you need to become a professional presenter. We can help you with that. And I hope that our presentation this evening has helped in some way to give you some ideas about how you can be more effective communicating in English. You need to have a clear understanding of your research area. Of course you do. Believe in what you are presenting. Very important. Show your audience that you do believe your presentation, in your results. Define your audience, respect your audience, using effective examples to demonstrate your points, be factual rather than opinionated, and of course, monitor your audience responses. You can't see me this evening, but if you're doing a presentation in person, you've got to look professional. That gives the audience an expectation of quality. Don't play with things, keys, pointers. Don't misuse the pointer. Don't do annoying things. Speak clearly and be as confident as possible. You're going to know your area inside out. Be sure that you have a clear understanding. You can do additional research before you begin your presentation on your audience makeup. You can bring support materials with you if appropriate. Start on time. Have quality presentation materials, be confident in your style, speak in a positive and projecting manner, smile at your audience, and never say negative things. Some of the negative things that people often say in presentations include, I've never done this before. I'm not really sure what to tell you. I don't really know much about this topic. Don't make those mistakes. Communication skills can be learned. One slide, your communication, your conclusions and recommendations for the future. Thank your audience. Be prepared for questions. Thank you for your attention. We don't want to see a thank you slide. We don't want to see a reference slide. Tell people what you're going to tell them. Tell them the information and tell them what you have already told them. Keep calm, use your time effectively. We will show you how to network effectively. It's better always to meet a smaller number of people and make it count. Give yourself time to relax and prepare for your contributions. Rest and take time to follow up. What have we talked about today? We've talked about making a conference poster, communicating your research at conferences, how to do it and how not, and a few presenting and networking skills. I hope that this has been useful a little bit, as of course our the main reason that we do this, of course, Naran, the Mars Training Network, the Mars Research Hub, and we are here to help you enhance your career and achieve your potential. Thank you so much for listening. We are a Research Square company. Have a look at our preprint server. You can see it here on the slide, researchsquare.com. We also have an amazing, fantastic digital editing tool, resources.aje.com, digital editing web. And with that, it's time for me to